With the release of Star Wars Obi-Wan Kenobi Episode 2, a series of events went down that probably sent a slight shock down anyone who has ever seen Star Wars Rebels. The Grand Inquisitor was stabbed by the third sister Reva after trying to stop her from hunting Kenobi. Obviously, if you've seen Rebels though, the Grand Inquisitor is alive and well hunting down Kanan and Ezra. So how can he have just died? Well, I'm going to break down some of the very popular theories about this, including some absolutely crazy ones. So hit that subscribe button for more Obi-Wan Kenobi news and lore, and let's get into it. So the first major option on the table for this is literally that the Grand Inquisitor is just not dead. This is the option that is 90% likely to be true and probably fits the best with the current canon. Him not being dead might just be a way to take him out of the show so that they can focus on other storylines, but that might just be a large dose of copium. The Grand Inquisitor is a member of the Pau'an species from Utapau, and we know from the Canon Novel Last Shot that they actually have two stomachs. This is a nice little way to keep the Grand Inquisitor alive through canon lore that already exists, but I doubt they were thinking about this when the show was written. Other than that, you can just look at the countless people who have survived horrific injuries like Darth Maul, Cad Bane from the Clone Wars unfinished episode, and now probably even the Book of Boba Fett, and you'll see that it's very possible to survive from something like this. Fennec Shand herself was even able to survive a direct shot to the stomach thanks to Boba Fett collecting her and bringing her to a local mod parlour. Although the most direct example we have of this type of injury is Qui-Gon getting stabbed by Darth Maul in the same way, and the result of that was death. We even then see an extended post-death shot of the Grand Inquisitor lying on the ground, no longer having his Sith eyes and certainly not breathing. This is way different from what they did with Cobb Vanth or Cad Bane, as in those shots we had a group calling for medics for Vanth, and then a flashing light for Cad Bane. Here, there was nothing, just a lifeless Pau'an lying on the ground, so those are definitely some points against this. But either way, let's move on to the more fun and darker theories. And I just want to know what you guys think about this scene at all, by the way. Was it really necessary? Let me know down below. So the first major theory is that the Grand Inquisitor shown in Kenobi is actually a failed or slightly bad clone of the real Grand Inquisitor who we see in Star Wars Rebels. The evidence that people use for this theory is pretty much that the Grand Inquisitor who dies in Kenobi is not the same one we see in Rebels, so nothing gets broken. It also says that the reason the Grand Inquisitor in Kenobi looks so different in Kenobi than Rebels is because of the difficulty of cloning a Force-sensitive being. Maybe the head got more compressed and the teeth weren't as wild because it's just plain hard to clone Force-sensitive beings like the Grand Inquisitor. The main thing pointing away from this theory is that it would just be quite the coincidence for a man of the exact same species, the exact same speaking style, the exact same markings, and the exact same personality to take over the role of the Grand Inquisitor again. But this problem does sort of go away if the original donor simply takes the role instead of his clone for Star Wars Rebels. The only reason I say the one in Rebels isn't the clone is because the one in Kenobi doesn't really look like any of the other Pau'ans we've ever seen, including from Revenge of the Sith and the comics. So if any of them are going to be the clone, it would be the one in Kenobi. Now, another really interesting point is that in Star Wars Rebels, the Grand Inquisitor says that there are some things far more frightening than death.
You have no idea what you've unleashed here today. There are some things far more frightening than death.
Originally, we all thought he was referring to Darth Vader and the brutal punishment that he might have received for failing him, but if the Grand Inquisitor is just a clone, then maybe this worse-than-death experience is him being cloned. Maybe the process is so excruciatingly painful or mentally scarring that he would rather die in Rebels than go through that process ever again. All of this would also explain his utter ruthlessness in Rebels being pretty far from what we see in the Obi-Wan show. We know that many Darksiders who suffer from extreme injury are able to survive through the dark side, but when they come out on the other side, they are changed forever. They are more ruthless, cold, and just generally filled with hate. Now, with all of this said, I have to go back to the recent issue of the Star Wars 2020 comic run, where the Grand Inquisitor also kind of came back from the dead there. On the remote and force-rich planet of Tempest, Luke Skywalker discovers a long-abandoned temple and attempts to enter. Once Luke makes it into the vast chamber, he is greeted by a stash of ancient Jedi artifacts, holocrons, and statues, and lots of stuff from the old days of the Jedi. Luke eventually picks up an old Jedi Temple Guard lightsaber and uses it from that point onwards. But then something else much more mysterious happens. A burning apparition of the Grand Inquisitor appears and wants him to be careful with what he wishes for. This is of course set way after the Grand Inquisitor's original death in Rebels. It's honestly not really clear whether he's a Sith Force ghost, which can be only attached to objects, or more of a dark side spirit or wraith, but whatever it is, he clearly can interact with the physical world. In a way, it's almost like he's haunting Luke Skywalker like a ghost who couldn't quite pass into the netherworld of the Force because something is keeping his soul in turmoil in the real world. After this, Luke even duels the Grand Inquisitor in his fiery supernatural form and manages to put up a pretty good fight, honestly. We then see the Grand Inquisitor destroying a nearby holocron, confirming that whatever version of him this is, he can certainly have a significant impact on the real world. Eventually, Luke has had enough and cuts the hand of the Grand Inquisitor in half, and nothing really happens. The spot where Luke cuts is simply turned to fire, but the rest of him is completely fine. Luke then defeats him and is sent back into whatever realm he is now from, but not for long. Soon after, Darth Vader arrives on the scene, and the Grand Inquisitor appears to be back into his fiery form without injury. This definitely points to him being a Sith Force ghost or some sort of Sith alchemy keeping his spirit alive. So if that is the case, maybe Vader was able to revive the Grand Inquisitor using Sith alchemy or the dark side after his death in the Kenobi show, but the second time around in Rebels, his body was far too damaged. That would again connect with his line about there being things far worse than death. The Sith alchemy process was probably a complete nightmare for him, so he chose to drop off the ledge in Rebels in order to destroy his body to a point where Vader could never use it again. Obviously that failed because he was brought back in that abandoned temple, albeit in a much less effective form. Now the final layer to this is a possible essence transfer with the Grand Inquisitor's body. We know that cloning Force sensitives is likely too hard, as seen by Palpatine's son who wasn't even Force sensitive, so what if the Grand Inquisitor underwent an essence transfer? That would even start to tie in with The Mandalorian Season 2 given the Snoke tanks, the Bad Batch with Mount Tantus, and pretty much all of Palpatine's survival plans. What if Vader saved the Grand Inquisitor by using an essence transfer and then warned the Grand Inquisitor that if it ever happens again, he'll be trapped somewhere much worse, aka inside of the temple? That again would match perfectly with the Grand Inquisitor trying to destroy his own body and soul in Rebels so that Vader couldn't do that to him, but sadly he failed and ended up bound to an inanimate object for eternity inside of that temple. At this point though, I fully believe that he's just alive after that stabbing incident with Reva, and it will all just be waved away as him getting some medical treatment after the show. They probably just wanted to have that scene there for dramatic impact, regardless of what sense it made with the rest of the timeline or not. And in the trailers, it doesn't even look like the GI is coming back at all in the Obi-Wan show, but we'll have to wait and see on that. He's certainly not with them on Ner in the few shots we see there at Fortress Inquisitorius, but hey, I'm excited to see where they go with it. So let me know in the comments what you think is going to happen to the Grand Inquisitor. Is he a clone in Rebels, or did he survive? I'd say the survival is much more likely, but hey, either option is on the table. So those are the most popular theories about what on Kamino is going on with the Grand Inquisitor in Obi-Wan Kenobi and Star Wars Rebels. Thanks so much for watching guys, really hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, hit that subscribe button and leave a like down below. Cheers guys, I hope to see you in the next one. If you made it this far, leave a comment down below saying, "Thank Mr. Grand Inquisitor," even though you're probably dead.
Really think I'd let you take all the credit?